Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into how we actually, experience the world around us. Not just how scientists explain it, but the raw experience itself.
That's right. And our main guide for this is the philosopher Maurice Merleau-Ponty. We're focusing primarily on his major work, Phenomenology of Perception, but we'll pull in insights from his other writings too, like The Prose of the World and Sense and Nonsense.
Okay, so what's the goal here? What are we trying to get out of Merleau-Ponty?
The mission really is to explore his idea that our lived perception, our direct encounter with the world, is primary. It comes first. Scientific explanations, theories, those are built on top of that foundation. They don't replace it.
Right, so it's about understanding how we see, feel, and interact before we get to the formulas and abstract concepts.
Exactly. Think of it like appreciating a painting first, feeling its impact, before you start analyzing the pigments or the canvas structure.
Got it. And we've gone through quite a bit of his work and some analysis, too, to try and distill the key stuff. Because, let's be honest, philosophy like this can be dense.
It definitely can be challenging, but there are some real aha moments in there, insights that can genuinely change how you think about your own experience. That's what we want to highlight.
Okay, so where does he start? What's the jumping off point?
Well, Merleau-Ponty begins by kind of pushing back against two dominant ways of thinking about knowledge that were common: empiricism and intellectualism.
Empiricism being the idea that everything comes from sense data, what we see, hear, touch.
Right. Raw sensory input is the source of all knowledge. And intellectualism is more the idea that we have innate concepts that our mind imposes structure on the world. Think Kant, maybe.
Okay. And Merleau-Ponty says both are missing something crucial.
Yeah, he thinks they both kind of skip over the immediacy of our lived experience, our direct connection. He follows his teacher Husserl's call to get back to the things themselves.
To the things themselves. What does that mean in practice?
It means starting with the experience as it is lived before we overlay theories or scientific explanations. Science, he says, is valuable, absolutely, but it's a second-order expression.
Second order, meaning it comes after.
It comes after the initial encounter. It's an interpretation or explanation of the world we are already living in, already experiencing. It's like reading the game commentary versus actually playing the game.
Okay, makes sense. So our own personal viewpoint isn't just passive, it's actively involved.
Hugely involved. He stresses that all my knowledge of the world is gained from my own particular point of view. Your consciousness isn't just a camera recording reality, it's part of what constitutes reality for you.
So ignoring that perspective, like a purely objective scientific account might try to do, is problematic.
He calls it naive and at the same time dishonest, because it pretends to offer a view from nowhere, when in fact, every view, even a scientific one, originates from a conscious perspective embedded in the world.
Okay, that's a strong statement. Now, you mentioned he critiques empiricism specifically. He uses this example about proofreaders.
Ah, yes, the illusion of proofreaders. It's a great example. Empiricism suggests we perceive things by assembling tiny bits of data, like seeing individual letters, then maybe remembering words and putting them together.
Like building with Lego bricks.
Kind of, yeah. But think about proofreading your own writing. How often do you miss obvious typos, even reading it over and over?
All the time. You see what you expect to see or what you meant to write.
Exactly. That shows we don't just perceive isolated letters or sensations. We often grasp the meaning, the intended word or sentence right away. Our initial perception is already, as he puts it, a whole already pregnant with an irreducible meaning.
So the meaning isn't something we construct after seeing the bits. It's often there in the seeing itself.
That's the idea. You look at your keys, you don't see silver color, jagged shape, cold feeling, and then deduce keys. You just see your keys. The meaning, the objectness, is immediate.
Okay, that feels right. So we're not passive receivers. We're actively engaged in finding meaning. Now, what about this transcendental field concept? Sounds a bit floaty.
Haha. Yeah, the term is a bit philosophical. But the core idea is about the limits of our own reflection. Think about trying to see the world objectively, completely stepping outside yourself. Can you do it?
Well, no. I'm always looking from my perspective. I can't see my own eyes without a mirror, right?
Exactly. The transcendental field is that background awareness, that lived world that we are always within. Even when we try to reflect on it, like in philosophy, that reflection itself happens from our situated viewpoint. We can't capture the whole thing, make it an object in front of us, because we're part of it.
So even deep philosophical thought can't give us a complete detached picture of everything.
That's Merleau-Ponty's point. He contrasts this with some older philosophies that seem to suggest reason could achieve a kind of total understanding. He argues we're always embedded.
Embedded, like stuck in our context.
In a way, yes. Take the sun rising and setting. We know, scientifically, the Earth orbits the sun. But does that stop us from experiencing the sunrise? From seeing it climb over the horizon?
No, of course not. That lived experience persists.
Right. Or think about your own history or culture. Can you ever completely think outside of that? It always shapes your perspective, even when you try to be objective. Classical transcendental philosophies sometimes aimed for a complete disclosure of being, but Merleau-Ponty says our situation always limits that.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. We're always grounded. Which brings us neatly to the body, which is super central for him, isn't it?
Absolutely central. He really goes after the old Cartesian idea of the mind as separate from the body, like a ghost in a machine.
And the phantom limb phenomenon is a key example for him.
It's a powerful one, yes. People who've lost a limb often still feel it vividly, sensations, itches, even pain in the missing arm or leg.
Which is just mind-bending when you think about it. How does he explain that? Purely physical explanations seem insufficient.
They often are. Explanations focusing just on irritated nerve endings at the stump or reorganization in the brain cortex, they don't fully capture the experience. Sometimes anesthesia doesn't stop it. Sometimes people born without a limb experience a phantom.
Wow, so it's not just physical signals gone wrong.
Not entirely. Merleau-Ponty highlights the psychological dimension. Strong emotions can trigger it. Memories associated with the limb can play a role. And sometimes, crucially, as a person comes to terms psychologically with the loss, the phantom can actually fade or change shape.
So mind and body are much more intertwined than we usually think.
Deeply intertwined. For Merleau-Ponty, the body isn't just a tool the mind uses. It's our fundamental way of being in the world, our access point. He famously flips Descartes, suggesting I can comes before I think. Our capacity for action, for movement, is more basic than abstract thought.
I can before I think. I like that. He had that example with the ruler in the nose,
Yeah.
right?
A patient, perhaps with some brain injury, might be able to tell you where their nose is or even point to it, showing a kind of map-like intellectual knowledge.
Okay.
But ask them to touch their nose with a ruler. An action requiring embodies spatial awareness, that sense of where your body parts are in relation to each other and the object, they might completely fail.
So there's a difference between knowing about where your nose is and the body's own practical knowledge of how to reach it.
Precisely. The body has its own way of knowing, its own intentionality. He calls this motility as basic intentionality. Our movements aren't just reflexes, they're directed, they anticipate, they're already engaged with the possibilities of the world. Our bodily space isn't just coordinates on a graph, it's the familiar space we live and act within, what he calls the matrix of habitual action.
Okay, the body as our grounding, our way of knowing through doing. What about the senses? We don't just experience one sense in isolation, do we?
No, and that's another key point. Our perception of anything is inherently intersensory. Take touching a wooden table. You don't just feel hard surface and see brown color separately.
Right, you experience wooden table. It's a unified thing.
Exactly. The thing isn't assembled from separate sense data. It's something discovered or taken up by our gaze or our movement, engaging multiple senses that confirm and enrich each other. The look of the wood grain implies a certain texture. The feel of it confirms its solidity.
So seeing something almost prepares you for how it will feel or sound.
Yes. Each sense organ and our whole body posture is oriented towards exploring the object's full sensory profile. He talks about how perceiving an object through one sense calls upon itself the concordant operation of all the others. Sight calls upon touch. Touch might imply a certain sound if tapped, and so on. They work in harmony to reveal the object.
That feels very intuitive when you stop and think about it. Okay, what about language? How does that fit into this picture of embodied perception?
He has a really interesting take on language, too. He pushes back hard against the idea that language is just a neutral tool, like putting clothes on pre-existing thoughts.
So thought comes first, and language just labels it? He disagrees.
Strongly disagrees. He argues that language itself can teach us things, can shape meaning. The meaning of a word isn't just its dictionary definition, it's built up through its use, through the sentences and context it lives in.
So language isn't just a reflection of thought, it actively shapes it.
Yes. He calls speech a paradoxical operation. We use words that already exist, with their histories and connotations, but we use them to express something new, an intention that might slightly twist or extend the meaning of those very words.
Can you give an example?
Think of a poet using familiar words in a completely fresh combination to evoke a feeling that didn't quite exist in language before. Or even just learning a new concept, the word, helps crystallize an idea you couldn't quite grasp previously. It's like a painter using existing colors, but creating an image that says far more than just red here, blue there.
Okay, language is a creative force, not just a labeling system. Let's loop back to his critiques. We talked about empiricism. How does intellectualism fall short for him?
Intellectualism, he feels, often just takes the empiricist world of sensations and adds consciousness to it. It creates a sort of ready-made world map in the mind, but doesn't capture the lived experience of being involved with things.
So it's still too detached.
Yeah, both intellectualism and empiricism, in his view, are trying to arrive at some true object, separate from our perceiving of it. But Merleau-Ponty insists perception is fundamentally about our inherence in things. We are involved with the world through our bodies, our senses, our history, our language. We're not detached observers.
This theme of being involved or embedded keeps coming up. How does time fit in? He talks about Descartes' cogito. I think, therefore I am.
Right, the famous cogito. Merleau-Ponty gives it a twist. He emphasizes the temporal thickness of thinking. I think isn't some instantaneous flash of self-awareness happening outside of time.
It happens in time.
It happens through time, through our engagement with the world. Our perception of the present moment is always informed by the immediate past and already reaching towards the future. This flow, this temporal structure, is created by our bodily engagement. You can't have a disembodied, timeless, I think.
So my awareness right now includes a bit of what just happened and an anticipation of what's next.
Exactly. There's a continuity, but also what he calls an ever-recurrent failure. The present moment is always slipping away as we try to grasp the unity of the object or the thought through time. So the cogito isn't this absolute certainty of a mind separate from the world. It's the certainty of a consciousness situated in a body, in history, in the flow of time.
Okay. Now, I know his later work gets even more complex, dealing with the visible and the invisible, the flesh of the world. Can you give us just a tiny flavor of that?
Just a hint, maybe.
Yeah.
He started moving towards more fundamental questions about being itself, ontology. He used this term flesh not just for our bodies, but for the interwoven fabric of reality itself, a kind of reversibility between the seeing and the seen, the touching and the touch.
Reversibility.
Yeah, the idea that our body is made of the same stuff as the world it perceives. We lend our body to the world, he says, so the world can inscribe itself upon us. It suggests an even deeper unity between perceiver and perceived. But that really is a whole other deep dive.
Definitely sounds like it. Okay, to make some of this more concrete, he uses the painter Cézanne as an example, right? How does Cézanne's art illustrate these ideas?
Merleau-Ponty was fascinated by Cézanne. He saw the painter as someone who visually captured the principles of phenomenology. Cézanne broke away from traditional methods like sharp outlines and strict linear perspective.
What did he do instead?
He focused on color. He wanted to capture the physiognomy of things, their presence, how they emerge from the interplay of light and color, just as we experience them. He felt the outline, the edge of an object, shouldn't be drawn first, but should emerge from the colors meeting and interacting.
So the shape arises from the color patches, rather than the color filling in a pre-drawn shape.
Exactly. It reflects the world's density, what Cézanne called a mass without gaps. It mirrors Merleau-Ponty's idea that the perceived object isn't built up from sensory data, but presents itself as a unified whole, a center from which sensory qualities radiate. Cézanne was trying to paint that preconceptual, lived encounter with the solidity and presence of things.
Painting the world as we actually perceive it before we analyze it. That's a great connection. Okay, so as we wrap this up, what are the big takeaways from Merleau-Ponty?
I think the really crucial things are, first, the primacy of lived experience. It's the foundation. Second, the body isn't just a thing. It's our active way of being in and knowing the world. Third, our perception is intersensory, a unified whole. Fourth, meaning isn't just added later, it's often there in the initial encounter. And fifth, our consciousness is fundamentally temporal, lived through time.
And things like science. Abstract thought, they're valuable, but they always rest on this deeper layer of embodied, lived experience.
That's the core message. Science explains, philosophy reflects, but they both draw their material from this pre-scientific life of consciousness that we're living all the time.
Right. So a final thought for everyone listening. How might thinking about this change your own relationship with the world? Maybe just try later today to notice that pre-scientific layer.
Yeah, notice the feeling of the world. the texture of your clothes, the way your body knows how to walk downstairs without you thinking about every step, the immediate recognition of a familiar face.
Consider how that fundamental embodied experience underpins everything else you think and know. It's quite profound when you pay attention to it. And of course, if you're intrigued, Merleau-Ponty's work offers much more to explore.
Definitely worth diving deeper if this sparked your interest.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.